Hi, welcome to my discussion of BlowUp by Cortazar. This is another fairly complex short story by Julio Cortazar. In true to form, we have another unreliable narrator. In fact, in the first 2 pages, he refers to himself as I, we, and him, I think they at some point. Interestingly enough, he seems to settle on the I person to tell most of the story, but occasionally interjects into Michael. Michael is also the same character. What about Michael? Well, we know he's a translator like Cortazar himself was, this time from Chile, and he seems to be translating some kind of dry, very boring social treatise or something. And his hobby is to take photographs, and he looks forward to this beautiful morning when he can go out and take pictures. He's living in Paris, and it's a very photogenic city. So he goes out to take pictures, and he loves the photography because it takes him out of himself and makes him focus, very much on details on the moment. And he walks around looking for a suitable subject. And he sees this woman and a boy. And first he thinks it's a couple. He gets closer and he sees that the boy is only about 15 years old and the woman is older, probably in her 30s or so. But they're still kind of like a couple. She seems to be seducing the boy. The boy seems to be afraid and kind of trying to not to back away, but not real happy to be there either. And he starts to analyze them a little bit. He described her as almost handsome, wearing an almost beautiful fur coat with green slime eyes. Now, what kind of character has green slime eyes? Obviously, not a very good character. Someone kind of sleazy or kind of disgusting. And the young boy, the young man, he's about 15. He seems to be wearing what looks like his brother's yellow gloves poking out from his jacket, and he seems reasonably well dressed. He seems like he probably came from a very traditional middle class family. They all have lunch together at noon, but someone who probably doesn't have any cash. And the idea of having some kind of cash might be appealing to him. And he's just still discovering who he is, and he doesn't seem to have experience with women, and that's why this woman is both fascinating and terrifying to him at the same time. And we're forced to think back on Freud's concept of the Oedipal complex, where it's in fact the young male who or the young man or the baby or the child who wants to sleep with his mother. Only this time it seems reversed because it's the mother figure who's trying to sleep with the child. And even when Cortazar imagines what will happen after the encounter, he's imagining her taking kind of a mother role, not really interested in the sex so much. And he imagines this future, and it's not that pretty. Probably not that terrible either, but just not very pleasant, and he doesn't really like the idea of her seducing this boy. He feels mortally offended. And as he's watching them, he anticipates that soon she'll be touching him, soon she'll be taking him back to her apartment. And he decides that it's the right time to take a picture. And as he takes a picture, he steps out of the role of voyeur into the role of participant in the action. The boy turns and runs. She gets angry at him. And he had noticed earlier a man in the car reading a newspaper, he didn't think this man was significant. But now this man gets out of the car and comes to him, and these two angry people start asking Michael, or the narrator, to hand over the film. And he refuses to do that. And he leaves, goes back to his job as translator, goes back home. A couple days later, he develops the pictures, loves the picture he took of the young man and the woman, blows it up several times, tacks it on his wall, and as he works, he has the same angle view of it as he did when he was taking the picture, which he loves. And he takes pleasure in seeing the picture until suddenly the hand of the woman moves when he's looking at the picture. And the picture comes alive. And he's back in the scene. And he'd been unable to take the picture of the couple. And finally he intervenes and starts to shout to warn the boy to go away. The boy runs away. Once again, he's the hero. But instead of a happy ending where he walks away, he's confronted by both this angry woman and this angry man. And the man is really scary. He has a black tongue and a black mouth. And he's very angry, and he puts up his hands in a fist. And we don't really know what happens. Presumably, he's hit him. The next scene described as the sky, the clouds. And throughout the story, we have this kind of omniscient narrator talking about the clouds and the pigeons and such. And it seems like that's what he saw when he came to. And in the beginning, this is a good time to go back and read the beginning. In the beginning, he said, well, because I'm dead, but yet I am alive. And so we wonder, has this second story, the second interpretation of the picture and reinterpretation of the story, has this in fact been some kind of a delusion? Is he perhaps schizophrenic? Has he entered a full-blown psychosis at the end where he's non-functional and all he can do is stare off into the sky? That's the dilemma. That's what we're not sure of at the end of the story. But I think Cortazar has really clearly shown the complexity of the character. And in the 50s and 60s in France, in French philosophy, and you have people like Michel Foucault and eventually Jacques Derrida, who are challenging the concept of normalcy as it is. And, why do we lock up people with disorders? And so there's almost a kind of exaltation of the neurotic personality, or the person who has some kind of a disorder, so that it is like more cool to have a mental disorder than to be normal, especially for artists. And Michael ends at the end of the story, is writing a story. At the beginning of the story, he is writing a story. He's writing the story, the two stories of what happened. So he is an artist. So whether Cortazar is trying to glorify him as an artist, or whether he's simply presenting the story told from the perspective of someone who has a fragmented personality, or some kind of personality disorder, is up for us to decide. I hope you enjoyed that story. Thank you very much.